bandwidth provided by Recursive Squirrel Interactive. Visit them on the web at recursivesquirrel.com. Episode 580, Demi-God or Demi-Glace? For Monday, February 17th, 2020, it's time for this week's edition of the BeanCast, a weekly discussion about the news and issues facing marketers today. I'm your host, Bob Norp. Thanks for joining us. Eventually, politics adopts just about every marketing innovation, but meme advertising? Well, the often frivolous communication tactic is at the heart of a new effort from the Bloomberg 2020 campaign. Does it make sense? Tonight, we'll discuss. Also, reimagining the entire adtech space, the cancellation of Mobile World Congress, whether pay to watch is the future of streaming, plus this week's Fair, Fail, Foul. That's the lineup. Let's meet tonight's panel. Thanks for joining us for this week's BeanCast. I'm Bob Norp, and with me on the panel for this evening, we start with the founder and principal consultant at Beetle Moment Marketing, voice marketing expert, Ms. Emily Binder. Hi, Emily.
Hi, Bob. It's good to be back. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Now, next, he's both the smartest man in the world and an experiential marketing demigod. The founder and principal of the idea integration company, Mr. Saul Colt, is here. Hi, Saul.
Hey, Bob. Thanks for having me on the show.
Of course. And next, he's both the smartest man in the world and an experiential... No, that's doing Saul again. Let's go to the next one.
Thanks for having me on the show again, Bob.
You're welcome. I'm glad I could have you on 2 times in a row. And finally, he's the founder of Toronto-based agency Church and State, writer and speaker, Mr. Ron Tite. Ron, hi. How are you?
I am not a Demi-God, I am a Demi-Glace.
I will keep that in mind. Well, let's jump right into the topics, because the first one's a really interesting one. The news is just going crazy about the Mike Bloomberg 2020 campaign embracing meme advertising. Now, they're working with quite a few of the top Instagram influencers in the space, as we talked about before the show, many of whom we can't say out loud because they use all kinds of weird names that are using curse words. So, Saul, personally, I don't see the point of any of his efforts to date. I'm not saying that meme advertising doesn't make sense for a political campaign. I just don't understand what the Bloomberg campaign is doing with their particular effort. But am I missing something? Am I just being old here and not embracing this like I should?
So let me lay this down for you, Bob. I'm going to give you why it's brilliant and why it's like really silly and irresponsible at the same time. So first of all, I love this idea because it's kind of like MTV's Rock the Vote for a new generation. And while people are calling it a bust, I think it probably will prove to, awaken a bunch of younger voters who probably don't follow politics or care who they vote for. And long term, I think it might actually work out pretty well for them. But I also see why people are against this or think it's a miss, because the nature of memes in general aren't ads. They're supposed to be these organic bits of comedy and not bought and paid for as like pieces of manipulation. But at the same time, you're going to see, I'm going to contradict myself like 5 times in this. If you think about it, the rules have really changed greatly since Obama's first campaign, because he hired Facebook executives to work that platform to its fullest. And while it was completely brilliant for him to do it, and he was successful doing it, it really opened up the idea that we, like all these campaign, these people running for office, need to hire new people with new ideas and exploit these platforms. There's nothing wrong with what Obama did, and I don't really see this really being wrong, except for one glaring thing that was offensive to me was the creative was really awful.
See, that was what got me. That was the creative, the actual lines of copy that they used. I didn't see the humor, and I just kept thinking, am I just missing something? Am I too old? Am I just not following along with the bathroom humor that, people of this age group might like? But I just don't think it's good.
Well, yeah, the creative was awful, and I think that was them trying too hard to like assimilate into this kind of like I don't know. The only thing I can really think of is kind of like this narc mentality. This 65, 70-year-old guy, however old Bloomberg is, trying to hang out with like high schoolers and 19-year-olds and 20-year-olds. But one interesting thing that I thought was that Facebook's reaction to it, and they stated that if these posts were boosted, then and only then would they be considered political ads. So,
just to be, let me interrupt, just to be clear for the audience, this campaign is happening on Instagram, but Facebook owns Instagram, so that's why they're weighing in. But go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this made me laugh when they said if these posts are boosted, because first of all, no memes get boosted. That sort of goes against the nature of memes. And you go down the list of people who they paid, I assume, a great deal of money to sort of give up their street cred or whatever to be a part of this campaign. But you have F Jerry, or as it's the F word Jerry, as I like to call him, make Whoopi Jerry. But he's got 14.9 million followers. He doesn't need to boost anything. Grape Juice Boys, Tank Sinatra, Kale Salad, all these people are in the 2 millions, the 3 millions, the 5 millions. White People Humor, there's no one on this list that I saw that was under 1 million except for like one person. So you got 1 million followers, you're not going to be boosting ads. So they found a loophole, they exploited it. If you add up the amount of followers, and I didn't do it, but if you add them up, eyeballing them, I'm guessing it's somewhere around 50 million. So if 50 million followers, maybe 7 to 10 million people actually see the memes before they were picked up by media and carried all over the place and really became viral. I'd say they got exactly what they paid for, except for the fact that they got really, really hosed on the creative. So, I have no idea what they paid. They probably got fleeced in the amount of money, but, money doesn't seem to mean anything. But man, they got the reach they were looking for. So I think probably at some point, both sides are going to be pretty happy.
But I think that's the two. I think Saul just pointed out the two issues here. On one side, there's the strategy of Michael Bloomberg deciding to do this tactic, and the second is the Facebook response, which is how media companies and tech companies are dealing with political advertising. So, I mean, if you look at the first part of it, which is independent of Facebook's response, I'll disagree vehemently with Saul on this. I think there's nothing good about this at all. I think this is Michael Bloomberg appearing on 21 Jump Street. Am I dating myself with that reference? Right?
I think
like
Michael Bloomberg is dating himself, but you go for it.
Right, but so first of all, strategically, there's nothing sound about this. There's nothing sound about the creative, about the strategic messaging to give you any indication of what Michael Bloomberg is going to the streets with. So that's the first part. Secondly, the creative interpretation of an empty strategy is even worse. As Saul said, the creative is horrible. The creative is going to, I think, backfire on him, because the people who are looking at this are going to go, it sounded like those lines sounded like they were written by Michael Bloomberg himself. Like, I just put Lamborghini doors on the Escalade or something. Like, come on, this is horrible creative.
I didn't even get that one.
No, I didn't get that one either.
Hey, I'm really rich. I'm so rich that I did this cool thing to something that's already really expensive. The third part is this is another example of the general population looking back at influencers and saying, what the hell is going on over there? Like, Michael Bloomberg literally paid an account called F Advertising money to run a meme campaign. So I don't know that you can I don't know there's a greater example of someone selling their soul and selling out their audience than being identified with the name F Advertising, yet taking a whack of money from Michael Bloomberg to, distribute these memes.
Okay, I'm gonna say enough from the Canadians. Let's get the American to talk about this. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Emily.
So I think it's awful. This is a serious problem on so many fronts. And Facebook, they have the greatest reach. They have an audience of 2 billion and have essentially said, we are not going to fact check. And it's not a sound political advertising platform, but this is where a lot of people are getting influenced about politics, unfortunately. It was the commissioner of the Federal Election Commission, Ellen Weintraub. She said, this is a new kind of activity that simply didn't exist when the rules for internet political communications were last updated. Wonder when that was. So, it's a problem. But I think what the Bloomberg campaign is trying to do is, well, you look at what happened with Trump and with their digital strategy, and the Democrats are saying we need to break the mold in how our party works with marketing, communications, advertising, and do it in this extremely internet social native way. Who cares if it's good or bad? I think there's just a sense of desperation of we need to update our tactics.
And that's exactly what I think. I mean, I don't necessarily believe that this is good creative or that this effort will help Mike Bloomberg, but that's not Mike Bloomberg's ultimate endgame. I mean, I know that he thinks that he might be able to become president, but he's not really banking on being president. He's banking on making Trump spend all his money before he gets to the actual battle for the White House with whoever the candidate's going to be. And, by putting efforts like this in, he's reimagining what a campaign can do with these efforts. What he's really doing is inspiring the other candidates in the Democratic field to step up their game and start doing stuff similar to this is what I'm thinking, because that's his stated goal. He says, even if I don't get it, I am funding the Get Trump Out of Office campaign is what he's doing. And it doesn't matter whether he has the nomination or not. He's going to be putting all this learning in the hands of the Democrats as a result of this.
And one other thing I'm going to say is I'm guessing, and sometimes I have too much faith in big brands and people like Michael Bloomberg to think that I bet he approved this campaign. He didn't fact check and look at every single account that they gave money to give. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But the one thing I do know about all these memes is they're all part of like the same network. They all scratch each other's backs. You can't go to, Make Love Jerry without, every seventh or eighth Instagram story, him saying, go follow my friend and vice versa. Like, so he probably just dumped a whack of money on the one account, the Whoopi Jerry guy, and who also is responsible for the Fire Festival. Let's not forget that. And he spread the money around to all these people. So, like, I'm sure if somebody said to Bloomberg while he's in his Lamborghini mashed up Escalade and said, hey, do you know that you gave, like, I don't know, $72,000 to white people humor? I'm guessing he wouldn't even know what that means, but who knows?
Well, how does this reshape the larger political landscape? I mean, does this change the way we think about good political advertising and strategy in the future? Because there's a lot of innovations out there, and obviously politics always eventually catches up with whatever the latest ad innovations are. Thus, we're doing meme advertising on this particular election cycle. So what do you think, Ron? Is this going to be something that's going to make people open the doors to other emerging areas, like doing more audio branding, doing voice efforts, doing experiential marketing? What do you think?
I think this is exactly what's going on in broader marketing, in that we're looking at these random tactics done by people like, I don't know, say Burger King or something. And it's just doing random things to try and push the envelope. That's not baked in any sound strategy whatsoever. And is politics going to follow? Yeah, I guess. It's because everybody else is doing this. I don't know. Am I the only one that just wants to go back and just rewatch It's Morning Again in America, voiced by Hal Riney? I mean, back when, like, that was a great political ad baked in a very sound strategy. I have no idea what this or any of the others will do. Will they be pushing tactics? Sure. Will they be effective? Vanity metrics? Sure. They'll get a lot of likes. They'll get a lot of press. I don't know that they're going to actually move the needle of the electorate.
The winner in each election cycle, and back me up on this, Emily. I mean, it's just like a winner in each election cycle embraces some new tactic, some new approach, And that's the weight on the scale that tips it over. I mean, it happened with Trump. It happened with Obama. And they embraced some kind of new technological innovation going on in the ad space, and that's what's credited with pushing them over the edge.
Yes, I would say so. I didn't see anything so nefarious with Obama's mobile marketing. Trump, definitely some evil stuff going on there, and Russian interference. And then this is just, like Ron said, lacking in strategy. None of these are just self-deprecating, and they are native to what the memes do, but there's nothing about his stance or, his campaign. He has had some good videos, but I've seen those on Twitter, nothing on Instagram worth mentioning. And I don't know what the point is, Bob. Who are they reaching? Is somebody who sees a meme on Instagram going to vote, for him? It doesn't seem like doesn't seem like a good use of money, but it does seem like, okay, at least they're stepping up and trying something to keep up with someone else who's breaking all the rules.
The self-deprecating part, I kind of get to a certain extent. If it was funny, if it was done well, it would work. I mean, self-deprecation by this guy being the awkward guy going on Instagram should be a very funny possible meme to work with. But Saul, it's just not, and that's the big problem. But
there's never been any hint that he's self-deprecating in real life.
Yeah, well, don't think about this campaign though. Think about the opportunities for other candidates in this particular race. Will this inspire people to do it? And who do you think in the current field of both the Republican running and the Democrats running in the U.S., who is best positioned to take advantage of a tactic like this or one of the other tactics I mentioned and really run with it and tip the scales in their favor?
So I don't think anyone's going to touch this with a 10-foot pole just because of the media backlash. So it's kind of like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If the media was all over this and said it was the smartest thing ever, they'd all pile on and Bloomberg would get credit for being the first. Because there's been negative backlash, I don't think anyone's going to go after it. But if anyone is still going to try, influencer campaigns or something like that, I think, so Bloomberg, I don't know if you guys have heard, he's running a bunch of radio ads with Michael Douglas, basically saying, I played a president on the movies and I know Bloomberg would make a great president. So like that, he's, he is really leaning on the influencer campaign. I think Trump is going to lean on influencer campaigns, maybe not with celebrities, but, hate groups and anti-Semitism organizations and all sorts of things.
Okay, allegedly. Let's not get ourselves in trouble here.
Hey-o.
Well, what do you think going forward? Anybody think that any of the tactics we talked about are going to be useful? I mean, Emily, I would think that you would think voice opportunities would be something that the political campaign should be embracing. Audio branding is something that we've been talking a lot about recently. That seems like it would be a powerful tool if someone were to really embrace it and use it. What's going on currently in the ad space that is most ripe for the picking for any of these political candidates?
Well, one of the articles that she sent out was about sonic branding, and I love that one, by the way. So none of these candidates have strong, unique sonic branding. Some of them have certain theme songs or walk-on music that they've associated with their campaigns, as plenty of politicians have over the years, but it's not really well done, and this is a miss. I think that, we'll see in the coming years that voice will be increasingly important for brands, including any politician. That's a personal brand. The sonic branding piece, though, is about understanding all the attributes of who that person is and taking a step back. It's not just picking an existing pop culture song, because in that case, you're really leasing existing culture versus creating culture or driving something new like you would with an original slogan. So there's a lot to be desired there from this round, at least.
Well, I think it's time to move on and talk about what's going on at the IAB, because the IAB is in a bit of a free fall these days. Google, having just set their timeline for closing off cookie tracking, has set the trade group into a struggle to reimagine the entire ad tech industry which they represent. Ron, there are a lot of proposals on the table. I mean, the one article that I was sharing to you guys just went into it at some length about all the struggles and conflict and debates over how to go forward. None of them look particularly good in my eyes, but where is your bet at the moment? What are you seeing as being the prime area to reimagine adtech as?
I'm betting on Michael Bloomberg. I think he's going to be the one that's going to save the day for us.
Did he
Look,
pay
if
you
the
$1 billion to do that?
yeah, exactly. If the IAB was a person, it would have been forced to resign years ago. Years ago.
So not a fan of the IAB, I take it.
Well, no, I mean, it's not that I hold anything against the organization. I think it is a very difficult position that they're in. I mean, we have seen the power of one organization in this space. And when you say, who I bet on, I'd bet on one of the big tech players. And it's not going to be the publishers, and it's not going to be the media, the media agencies behind this. Now, there's one other group other than consumers who can kind of go up to Congress and ask them to change the way advertising is. I certainly wouldn't say that Congress wouldn't go down this road, or government bodies wouldn't go down this road. But if let's not forget who's funding this entire ecosystem, and that is the big marketers. Their media budgets are handed over to media agencies. The media agencies create and place those ads across all the different publishers through often programmatic advertising buys. And it is their dollars that are being spent. And when you look at the lack of accountability in the media space over the last 5 to 10 years, who else do you look to but the IAB, the one organization who has said that they will state policy and represent these people? Now, I came from a traditional background. I was a creative director at a traditional multinational shop. And I still remember, when I was deep doing print and television, when the newfound digital player showed up and said, just you wait. It is going to be amazing, because consumers will only get to see the ads that they want to see when they want to see them, buying specifically what they want to buy. And now you flash forward to 15 years later, and now we're in the middle of this. It's worse. It's absolutely worse. There is no more accountability. There is no more effective advertising. And I would gather that consumers are more pissed off than they were. I would gather that consumers were more ticked off than they were 15 years ago. So I don't know who's to blame, whether it's the marketers, whether it's through agencies, or whether it's the association that has put themselves forward representing all these people. So I think they have a lot of work to do, but I wouldn't bet on them, because they're in a really difficult position when you have the power that Google has, that Apple has, that Mozilla has, all the others.
In all fairness, the IAB can't be hung with this, because the IAB has done their part in trying to bring accountability to the industry and has a lot of signatories to this particular effort and people who adhere to these principles that they've set forward as being good advertising practices. The trouble is that the marketplace is so much bigger than the membership of the IAB. I mean, you've got so many. I would venture to say that a majority of the ads, a clear majority of the ads on the internet, are not by IAB sponsored advertisers, or signatories to the IAB programs. So, I mean, how can the IAB police the internet when they don't have the members? They don't have the membership and support of most of the advertisers.
I agree with you, and that's why I said, it's something they can't win. It is beyond their powers. It is beyond their reach, and I think what the IAB could do a really great job at is being a think tank for the industry, of leading with proprietary research and looking at effective advertising within the space, what's working, what's not working, all those sorts of things that they do. They do a very, very good job at that. But as you said, this is well beyond their control. And I think we have to stop expecting them to be able to do it, because they just can't.
Good points. Emily, weigh in here on this with me. I mean, it's just like some of the proposals were interesting, but the complaints that come back from the advertisers and from the publishers is that we're trying to make consumers go through too many hoops. I mean, they have to contact the advertiser, and then they have to say they want to receive ads from the advertiser, and then they have to, and you have to go through 4 or 5 steps just to receive an ad. And I'm thinking, what's so wrong with that? I mean, it's a big hurdle, but if you incentivize it and you put it into something in a fashion that a consumer can understand and feel comfortable with and feel like they're getting something out of the transaction, this sounds like way better. You have a completely open-minded, willing audience who signed up to see ads because they know that they can get benefit from doing this.
Right. That's better than the current model. I think that if you actually kind of take a step back and look at the entire just premise that the internet is run in this way where we serve ads based on users' data, it didn't have to be that way. It actually was probably never really meant to be that way. You've got fake news running rampant, quality journalism's on the decline, and there's just not much money left in doing it this way for publishers. So it seems just that
but
the model.
Let me interrupt you for just a second, because it's like something you said. I want to drill down on that because it's the publishers are the ones who get the shaft in a lot of this. I mean, they're not making enough money, but in the long and the short of it, doesn't it's like a more informed, better audience become more valuable over time? Doesn't it make the ads more effective? Doesn't that mean more money in their pockets down the line? I mean, it's just like, why do we always think about volume in terms of ad profitability instead of quality, which is a much more valuable commodity?
Yeah, it does seem better when there's more informed consent, which you're mentioning. I think the real difference here that we have to keep in mind is with digital advertising, with social media advertising versus anything previous, the difference is now we have a constant feedback loop. So TV doesn't watch you back. Billboards don't see you back. But social media, search, YouTube, etc., if you engage with these, you are being observed, and the algorithms then determine what you see next and watch. And this determines what gets your attention, and this changes your behavior, which relates back to what we were talking about earlier. So there should be greater responsibility with it and more transparency.
But instead, we're working our butts off trying to create billboards that track you as well as the internet. So I mean, we're moving in the exact opposite direction.
But Bob, you raised a great point, and this is from Ian Altman, who said, this was never supposed to be about scale. It was supposed to be about targeting.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
We totally lost it on that, and that it became a scale game, not a targeting game.
And targeting a well-targeted ad is the most valuable thing anywhere. I mean,
Bob, I'm going to be 50 in June, and I have a baby coming in March. Trust me, I don't want ads for demographics because I'd be getting I'd be getting diapers for me, not diapers for my kids. So my life, I desperately need really specific and targeted advertising at me at the unique situation I'm in. I don't know that I'm getting them right now.
I'm going to wind up with you, Saul. What do you think here? It's just like, what's your opinion about this? I know how you feel about programmatic advertising. It's one of your most favoriteest things in the world. Where do you stand right now on the reimagining of the ad tech space, and how can it do better?
So I say we throw it all out and start from scratch because it doesn't work. And so a lot of my points have been, already mentioned by the other two panelists. But I just I think that the big thing, the problem with the ANA is that they never really fought. They weren't
IAB, not ANA.
IAB, sorry. They never really fought, where the ANA did fight. I got the two confused. And the IAB just sort of let things happen, and they were very kind and they were generous towards their members and things like that. but they really put themselves in a secondary position where they could have, made some really sweeping changes 5 years ago, 2 years ago, last year, and they sort of let things unravel in front of them. And now that they're where they are, I don't have the solution. I don't know what the solution is, but I think, in hindsight is always, 2020. But I really think that they took too of a cautious stance on everything that was happening around them, almost like, it's that whole belief that things will end up the way they're supposed to be, or something like that, where they really should have taken a stand and really fought, because I believe that, other organizations have fought, have made a change, and maybe succeeded or not succeeded, but they certainly aren't going to be in a position where people are looking at them as if they're redundant at this point.
Well, in other news out there in the world, there's apparently this killer virus called the coronavirus, and it's not only killing people, it's now killing conferences, with fears of the virus running wild and dozens of major exhibitors pulling out. The world's biggest mobile technology conference has canceled the event just weeks before it was scheduled to start. Emily, Mobile World Conference being canceled is a pretty big deal. It's going to affect a large swath of the mobile, the voice, the AI, and many other sectors of the tech industry. But was something like this inevitable? I mean, every time people go to CES, all we hear is conference crud, and we're going to get the flu, and we got to be careful, and we got to wash our hands. And conferences are just breeding grounds for exchange of all kinds of bodily fluids, dare I say, that can cause all kinds of trouble down the line. This is inevitable that one of these conferences would have to be canceled as a result of a virus outbreak, isn't it?
I suppose. This whole virus outbreak didn't have to be a thing. That could have been avoided as well. In the early days of this virus, what happened in China was that they arrested the doctor who was trying to let people know about it. And that was the critical first week. And then, what happened? He died actually from the virus, Dr. Li Wenliang. So that's too bad. But here we are. And I live in Austin. So immediately I read this and thought, great. So everyone's coming for South by next month. And international travelers included, 46 countries were represented at South by Southwest last year. I don't see them canceling that.
I'm going to Toy Fair this week, and everything's made in China.
Oh, man.
I mean, everything's made in China. So, I mean, I'm definitely putting myself right in the firing line for that.
Yeah, it's kind of a gamble. But I've seen stats that the regular flu and other versions of the flu are more deadly, more prevalent. This is one that's getting a lot of media attention. I also would say washing hands is the biggest thing. It's not about face masks. I mean, for anybody listening that's going to be at any conference, it's about hand washing.
But what about conferences as a whole and the marketing opportunities? I mean, not the marketing liabilities and the overall business liabilities of putting on a live event. Because it seems like this was inevitable that something like this would happen. And conferences are the linchpin of a lot of people's business-to-business marketing strategy. Getting out on the floor, shaking hands, showing off your wares, doing demonstrations, signing deals. I mean, conferences are where all this happens. Yet this kind of thing puts it in perspective that may not be the best way to proceed going forward.
It does. It puts it in perspective. But you asked if there was a way to have a virtual conference solution that might be tenable. I don't think so. There's no substitute for what happens in person at these conferences. So I hope that Mobile World Congress has excellent insurance. This happened because many of their sponsors pulled out. That's why they had to cancel.
So I'm going to jump in with 2 points. And first of all, I hope they have insurance. That's wonderful. That doesn't help all these brands and people that, journalists and people who are bought a non-refundable plane ticket to go, hoping that they'd be able to network their way into a job or a career or anything like that. It's kind of, it's an unfortunate, situation. But it's funny that the first conference that gets canceled is a mobile conference, because as we all know from a former client of mine, Whoosh, which is like Purell for your phone, Your phones are 10 times dirtier than a toilet seat. They're literally the most disgusting thing that you can like have on you. So the fact that, this exact conference has been a petri dish for years, and they're just using it as a convenient excuse. And you talk about virtual conference solutions. I hope you guys are buckled in. I got a long story here, but in November, I was hired to basically run marketing for what looked like a really interesting virtual conference solution. And they just weren't honest about money in the bank, and ran out of money, and so, long story short, I'm not running marketing for them. But it was a really interesting solution that, like, this would be the perfect case study for that. Will it replace that? I don't believe so. I thought it was a really cool product, and it was a really good way to spin out something quickly and cheaply. I think all these people who are event planners and everything should literally like just, it's going to sound awful, but like, just stop being silly. Like, nothing beats a conference. Nothing beats a speaker on stage. Nothing beats, the serendipitous collisions, I believe is the term Tony Hsieh uses, that like every good thing that's happened in my 15-year career has been from bumping into somebody in person. And, like I send out hundreds of emails all the time trying to keep relationships, strong and stuff like that. But nothing beats meeting someone in person and sharing a joke or just knowing about their family. We have to just move on. The virus is serious. I'm not belittling it or anything. But, it's like, you have the same chance of getting the virus at a conference as you do riding public transportation or anywhere. Take the same measures and go on with your day and do business. Like the fact that this was canceled is I think it's silly, and tons of people were affected by it. Business loss, money out of pocket, all sorts of things. I don't think it was necessary, except for, like you said, a couple of sponsors and a couple of major brands backed out, and this was a total panic decision. But I got news for you. There's probably people who already had their bags packed and already shipped. I imagine 2 weeks out, booths were already in transport trucks being sent to wherever this conference was running. So this was a real hasty decision.
Let me put it in another term then. Yes, conferences are important. Ron, you would agree with me on that. I mean, conferences are something that we all need to do because we need to get out of our office and we need to go out and meet people, and we need to exchange ideas in person, face to face, have dinner with people, get new ideas, get inspired. All that happens at conferences. Yet at the same time, it doesn't need to happen that way for everybody. Like, we don't need everybody packing these conferences. We can have some people who are there just for the education, getting that education via these virtual conferences or these distance learning opportunities. So is this a case for making smaller physical events, or is that still just not on the radar? And it's just the virtual conferences will always just be a kind of subsidiary income stream?
Well, put it this way: if it was like, oh, did you get to see? You got to see U2?
Supplemental.
Yeah, it was
I meant
amazing.
supplemental. I said subsidiary. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, yeah. So, like, if you're talking to someone, you're like, did you get to see the last U2 concert? Yeah, it was amazing. It was great. Oh, what row were you? Oh, no, I wasn't there. I was live streaming it through Skype. It was really cool. People were like, oh, you're on the B team. So, I think a couple of things might happen here. One, I think I have all the faith in humanity, and this isn't to take away anything from the seriousness of what this is, or for the unfortunate people who've fallen ill to it. But I think this will be cured. We will solve this, and we will get back to doing what we normally do. I just got back from a large global meeting, speaking at this thing in Dubai. There was not a concern from anybody in the room. And I think the hysteria will pass. We will get move beyond it and get back to doing what we normally do. Here's what I hope, though. I hope that the slight pause in activity kind of reinforces what we are experiencing in music. And that is that, yes, because we are consumed by digital content more and more and more, we can and should feel the pressure to make that digitally delivered content better, knowing that the great band is only going to come to town once every 3 years. And when they do, they're going to knock our socks off. And it is going to be so amazing that we'll be willing to exist on the digital crumbs until they come back again. So I think there are a lot of conferences. I think there are a lot of events. And I don't know that we need all of them. And I think hopefully this puts the pressure on the ones that do continue to hit it out of the park.
That's a good place to stop on that topic because we've got one more we want to cover before the end of the show. According to AdNext TV, 9 out of 10 consumers would prefer to subscribe to a streaming service that shares ad revenue with viewers. And I'm just going to ask everybody here on the panel, guess what business that AdNext TV is in? I'm sure you can figure it out.
I got a pre-roll ad to sell you.
But that aside, given the ever more crowded over-the-top space, does pay-to-watch advertising make sense as both a service differentiator for these streaming services? And they are really getting kind of muddled right now. There's so many different players in the online streaming of video. I mean, is this a good service differentiator and possibly a supplemental revenue model? What do you guys think?
It's a great marketing push, and it's a great sort of promise, and people will be really, eager to sign up for it until they get their first check for a third of a penny, because they're sharing 30% of the revenue with 7 million people or whatever the number is.
Right. I was surprised that with this stat, Bob, the 9 out of 10 consumers, they said that they would prefer to subscribe and have revenue sharing for ad watching versus just paying $1 a month. $1 a month? I mean, this is why we have such an issue with Facebook ads, because people are so used to this idea that content is free. And, the vast majority of users don't understand that they're the product. The advertiser is obviously the customer of Facebook. It's a terrible point where people think everything is supposed to be free. I mean, I've been in Business Insider Prime a couple of times the last few months, and people keep complaining. They say, oh, it's behind a paywall, Emily, I can't read the article. Oh, it would cost you a couple dollars, and it's a good site. It's quality journalism. Why are you not willing to pay for that? When did you start thinking it was supposed to be free?
When I became a podcaster. But go ahead, Ron.
I think that this is another example, that reinforces that we are governed by 3 truths. One is that business will try to extract as much revenue for their products as humanly possible. 2, that brands will put their message on anything, anywhere, if there are a pair of eyeballs attached to it. And 3, I think that, which is the most important part, that consumers will decide when it's too far. And, there will be some people who will say, yeah, I'm into that, and I want to watch that, and give me a third of a penny, and I'm cool with that. And there will be a whole bunch of others, me included, who will say, look, if I'm paying a subscription, I want to pay the subscription and not see anything. Don't give me your third of a penny. So in the end, are there enough consumers who will put up with this and fund the entire ecosystem so that it is sustainable from a finance model? And if so, then it will see the light of day.
One thing I want to clarify, I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly, because the example they gave in the article that I sent around was that AdNext TV was working with Divan TV, which was a streaming service. And Divan was going to be using this as an opportunity to both have subscription and pay back their users with ad revenue. So I'm assuming their users are still paying for the subscription to Divan TV, but they're also getting money back. And I think that's the main point here, is saying that it's not a matter of free versus pay. It's more that, sure, you pay $4 a month, but you're also going to get money back from us as a result of our ads, because we're going to rev share with you. That sounds like a pretty good differentiator. And if their stat holds up, and I'm very skeptical of this because this is an in-house survey done.
Here.
Yeah, but at the same time, if this stat holds up, 9 out of 10 people preferring to subscribe to a streaming service that has rev sharing on their ads, I mean, that sounds like it's a pretty good deal for everybody.
It's interesting that they sold it that way and didn't say that we would give you a rebate on your subscription fee.
Yeah, I mean that shows me that Emily's absolutely dead on right. That I think it was you, Emily. Didn't you say that the lack of money coming in would be next to nothing?
Yeah, I think I might have touched on that. And I know I was talking about journalism or writing, and this is about television, but my point was this overall idea of people just expecting the content to be free and not wanting to pay for things and being more willing to see ads than to just pay $1 a month to have an ad-free experience. Something interesting, if you've seen The Servant on Apple TV Plus, there was heavy Apple product placement, but it actually was written into the script before Apple TV Plus picked up the show. It just so happened that there was a ton of FaceTime and Apple, MacBooks and iPads and everything as part of the narrative. But it's such a nicer experience. I mean, for product placement, instead of watching ads, like that's a road to consider going down instead of just these ads.
Didn't you feel dirty though, Emily? I felt a little dirty. I didn't watch that one. I watched the morning show, and there were even just subtle Apple placements. And I'm an ad guy. Like heck, the agency name is Church and State, and I rolled my eyes at it.
I don't mind it though, because it doesn't seem far-fetched. Like these devices are a part of our everyday lives. It's not surprising to see them. But yeah, how do you hide it? It's there. It's a better experience than watching ads. Like Hulu is a major pain with ads. And Bob, we've talked about this. They repeat the same ones over and over throughout the show.
They're getting better. It's just they're starting the process of eliminating repeat ads, and they're also giving you a break if you're binging. They'll start giving you ad-free blocks in just to recognize that you're binging on the program and you don't need more advertising. So Hulu at least is doing a much better job than most of the streaming services. I mean, I'm like on CBSN, watching news, and it's the same ads over and over and over again in every single commercial break. I mean, most of the streaming services are terrible about that. Well, with that, it's time for this week's Fair, Fail, Foul. But before we get to that segment of the show, I do want to take this quick opportunity to thank my guests again and allow them to each do a shameless plug, starting with Emily Binder. You can find her at BeetleMoment.com. That's the home of Beetle Moment Marketing. Tell us what's going on in your world, Emily. What do you want to promote?
Well, thanks, Bob. Voice marketing is the way to ensure that your company or brand will be heard on the fastest growing consumer technology of all time, which is smart speakers. But voice assistants go far beyond smart speakers alone. Do you have a strategy for voice assistants like Alexa and Google Assistant and Siri? And what about voice search and podcasts and Alexa flash briefings? If not, don't wait to figure this out, because a year from now is too late. I've helped dozens of clients with great results across all of these mediums, and each month I have a small handful of executive consultation appointments by phone, which you can book at emilybinder.com/call.
Fantastic. That's awesome. And apologies to everybody out there whose Alexas just went off, because I just said Alexa and so did Emily. Now, next up, we have Saul Colt. Now, Saul Colt is the founder and principal at the Idea Integration Company, which is a phenomenal experiential marketing agency. Tell us what's going on in your world, Saul. What would you like to promote?
Two quick things. One, launching something really cool in Los Angeles in 15 days from now. But more and more of my clients are asking me to sign NDAs and not tell people that it's me behind the curtain, and they take credit for, which I'm fine with. So if you're in LA, just keep your eyes open. If you see something cool, it was me. The other thing is
that's a broad mandate.
The other thing, I have my own podcast that I never talk about on this show. It's not competitive to Bob because it's got really very little to do with marketing and advertising. It's called "We Now Join the Program Already in Progress," and it's really just me having long-form, meaningful conversations with people I really, either already love or want to love. Ron Tite has been on the show, and if I could brag for a minute, he's the second most downloaded episode we've ever had, except for the one this week, which is my friend Ross Ritchie, who was the producer of Two Guns with Denzel Washington and Marky Mark, and Marky Mark mentioned it, so it always helps when you have someone like that mention it to spur those downloads. But it's really just people I kind of like I've always wanted to talk to. So coming up on the show, we have the Unknown Comic from The Gong Show with Chuck Barris. Alan Zweibel is going to be on in a couple of weeks, who's the co-creator of the Gary Shandling Show. Had Tim Stack on, who is one of the funniest people in the world you've never heard of. So it's really just me having conversations with people I've always wanted to talk to, and I almost am hesitant to even tell you to go check it out, because this is really just for me. I don't care if anyone listens, because I get so much joy from it. Half the time I forget to even post them, but people like them, so check it out. You can check it out at Saul Talks, SAULTALKS.com.
That's great. Awesome. So definitely check out that website. And Ron Tite, our last person on the panel, you can find out more about him and his agency, Church and State, which is at churchstate.co. That's C-O. Tell us, Ron, what's going on in your world? Where are you speaking? Where are you going? What are you doing?
Well, yeah, it's been busy speaking. I am taking March off for the birth of our second child. So that's exciting. That is certainly primary right now. But you can get my book, Think, Do, Say, wherever you get your books. You can listen to my podcast, The Coup, after you've completed all of Bob's podcasts. And
that's a rather large endeavor. I'm not going to recommend anybody go back to my 11-year archive and try to pull out episodes, but go ahead.
That's right. Yeah. So it's The Coup, which looks at business disruption through the lens of a political coup d'etat. And that's very fun. What Saul failed to mention is that I was indeed the second most downloaded podcast episode, but at that point he had only done 2. So it was, well, no, it was actually a lovely time. It was a really great conversation, really fun. But yeah, otherwise, you can follow me at rontite.com.
That's great. That's awesome. Now, for more information about me or the show, visit thebeancast.com. There you can find a complete show archive. You can find out how to consult with me, and you can even find out how to advertise on the program. So check it all out at thebeancast.com. And now it is time for this week's Fair, Fail, Foul, a rundown of the best and worst of advertising, marketing, and public relations news from the last week. First up, I thought this one was pretty good, Emily. Unilever is going to end advertising to kids for all of their ice cream brands, and they own a lot. They own Ben and Jerry's. They own Edie's. I mean, they own so many different brands of ice cream. And they're going to cut off all the marketing to kids. I think this is really responsible and the right decision from them. It's kind of good for our industry, don't you think?
Oh, definitely. It's sad in a way because you kind of think about like the Good Humor Truck and childhood, but the thing is, kids don't need another Eskimo cone or a push pop that's full of sugar and chemicals and dyes. And we have childhood obesity as one of the most serious public health issues of the 21st century. And that is according to the World Health Organization. So the one thing is, there's this thing called the Strict Nutrition Standards established by the Children's Food and Beverage Advertising Initiative. And this is what General Mills and Unilever say that they will not advertise a product that doesn't meet these standards. But, they're the same standards that the original food pyramid basically had, like eat a loaf of white bread. That's so good for you. So none of this is any good. I'm glad that they're not advertising it to kids anymore. It's a good step.
It's a good step in the right direction. And that's the important thing. Next up, Rihanna, the pop star, has a lingerie brand called Savage by Fenty, and it's being accused of false advertising, Saul. They apparently advertise phenomenal discounts without disclosing adequately that you need to join their $50 a month club to get any of the deals that are mentioned in their advertising. In some ways, I think this is maybe a little bit harsh on the company, but in this age of transparency and digital accountability, it makes more sense to err on the side of right than to put yourself in the gray area, doesn't it?
Rihanna has dated both Chris Brown and Drake. The woman's been through enough. Leave her alone about this.
Okay. Well, there you go. Yeah, final opinion on that one. Now,
This is a tough room.
I was muted, Saul. Sorry, I was muted.
All right.
Well, get off that mute, Ron, because you get the next one. The Harriet Tubman debit card debacle. Oh my gosh. So there was this, the only black-owned bank in America got accused of racial insensitivity by Twitter users for putting out a Harriet Tubman debit card with an image of her with her arms crossed, which is taken from a painting by another African-American who was working in Miami, I believe, who had painted it years before Wakanda, which a lot of people said, this was taken from the Wakanda movie or the Black Panther movie, and it was a Wakanda Forever symbol. This is just such a disaster in so many ways, and it's like I can't even blame the bank for this. They did everything right, and they still got trolled really badly on Twitter.
Yeah, sometimes you can't win, and that's okay. I think they know that they did everything in the right way. Their heart was in the right place. They are certainly informed, certainly more than any other financial institution. And I think as long as they're confident that they took the right steps. This reminded me a little bit of, I used to be the creative director on Volvo, and people used to freak out that the Volvo symbol was the symbol for male. Of course, the original use of that symbol is iron. And so the Volvo symbol is for iron, not for a male. And, I think what the bank did is what Volvo did is you just double down on it and say, no, thank you for your concern. This was actually the intent behind the message, and we're confident we got it right.
Do you guys know the whole Russell Simmons Rush card that came out like 3-4 years ago? He tried to do the same thing. I'm a fountain of unmonetizable information, but he created this Rush card that was a debit card specifically for the Black community, and it caused like a real stir because it was marketed kind of as like by Blacks for Blacks, and even I looked at the website, it's still going, which I thought it was shut down a long time ago. But if you look at the website today, their marketing is really like you should only use this card at Black-owned businesses, and they do a $50,000 lottery every month to the cardholders. It's very strange, but it got the complete opposite of the Tubman thing. People embraced this like it was like finally there was a solution for Black people, where I'd never really understood it because like it just sort of seemed like someone really rich preying on people that needed help. But it's interesting how everything sort of through the same thing through a different lens gets you such a different reaction.
Well, it's all perception too. I mean, it's just like a lot of the Twitter commentary just assumed because it was a bank that it was some white executive off in a boardroom somewhere. And in fact, some of the tweets directly quoted something to this effect that
let me guess, this was created by a white bank executive. Yeah.
Right. It's just like without really digging in. And it's, I think when you're talking about Russell Simmons, I mean, people know who Russell Simmons is. Maybe that was their big problem, was they didn't do enough branding about who they were as a bank in order to make sure that people were aware of that. But that's an interesting point. Well,
when Saul said that it was the Rush, he created the Rush card, I thought Russell Simmons created a card for Rush fans with like a picture of Geddy Lee on the cover of the card or something.
No, that would be weird.
This reminded me of Shakira at the Super Bowl with the tongue flicking, which was Zagruta, right? But people misread that or misinterpreted it because they were ignorant at first. Same thing with the Wakanda Forever.
Yeah.
Oh, I think people got it.
All right, Saul.
Well, have a suggestion for this list or just want to discuss it? Comment online. Use the hashtag FairFailFoul. That's #FairFailFoul. And that does it for this week's show. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, visit our website at thebeancast.com and click on the subscribe link. If you're an Apple Podcast listener, we've also provided a direct link to our listing there, or just search for the BeanCast in the podcast directory on the Apple Podcasts app. And whichever podcast directory you use, when you subscribe, please leave us a review. Got a comment? Have a question? We'd love to hear from you. Just send your emails to beancast@gmail.com. Opening theme was performed by Joe Seibel. Closing theme by C. Jax. Thanks for listening. I'm Bob Norp. We'll be back again next week. Hope you'll join us then.
it's like if it's, you know what I mean? I don't know, man. Just like, okay, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like totally like that. It's like, I don't know, like if it's, you know, it's like, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's just like kind of, it just seems like it's just like almost exactly